Now, moving on to our next speaker, please welcome Amy Fagan, who is the LEAG Chair at Western Carolina University.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I think y'all might need to bring up my slides, or can I just click into it with the clicker? Oh, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so thank you very much for inviting me. As she said, I am the chair of the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group. This is a US-based group, and I'll talk about that, what we do on the next slide, please. Thank you. So LEAG was established in 2004 to provide analysis to NASA in support of lunar exploration. This can come from a variety of different topics, such as science, technology needs, commercial needs, and operations. And these all have large implications for lunar architecture planning and for prioritizing what activities we need to do on the lunar surface when we need to do them on the lunar surface. It's a community-based group, and it's rather interdisciplinary. So, for example, we're not just scientists. Even amongst the scientists, we're different types of scientists. We have lunar scientists, we have planetary scientists, we have life scientists. We have human biologists who are interested. If we're going to send humans to the lunar surface, we need to have an understanding of how those bodies are going to work. We also have engineers, mission designers, and managers, and they come from academia, from industry, from commercial groups, as well as the US government. Next slide, please. To keep you on track of where we are in this presentation, you can follow on the left side, and it will show you and highlight where we are, because I'm the last talk of this session, so I know everyone is really wanting to take a break and is probably a little bit tired. So I was asked to give updates on LEAG. It's a bit of a mouthful to say Lunar Exploration Analysis Group, so I'll just continue to call it LEAG. So LEAG updates and LEAG's vision on sustainable exploration on the moon, with specific emphasis on how space resources and ISRU fits into that. First of all, we really support the characterization and utilization of resources on the lunar surface, because that is going to help promote exploration of the moon, as well as exploration to other locations in the solar system. And you can see this from a variety of documents that I have here in this strange looking arrow on the left of the Lunar Exploration Roadmap, which I will discuss in a few moments. Specific action team reports. So these are generated when we have a request for an analysis. We form a team, and then the reports that come out of that are up on the LEAG website. We also have annual meetings of LEAG, and we have findings that are produced and sent to NASA. And finally, we have the official LEAG white papers. So these were produced for the National Academy's Decadal Survey. And so we have 4 LEAG official white papers for that. I've included the website link for the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group if you would like to get a little bit more information on that. But we need to have human presence, a sustainable human presence on the moon to be able to explore beyond the moon. And resources are a really important part of that. One of the ways that we're going to have this sustainable human exploration is through the Artemis program, by having partnerships with between the government and commercial entities using resources, realizing that studying the moon is actually learning about the whole rest of the solar system, for example, the bombardment history. And also that we want to continue to promote the ideas and using a lot of people to have diverse perspectives. So that's going to give us our best path forward. Next slide, please. Kent Brest already talked a little bit about the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium. So this is part of the Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative. One of the main focus areas of LSIC is in situ resource utilization. There are 6 focus areas. The others are dust mitigation, surface power, extreme environments, extreme access, and excavation and construction. But in situ resource utilization is a main component of that. We have formed a formal collaboration with LSIC. Our technology chair has become a formal league representative so that we can continue to stay informed and help each other out as much as we possibly can and help that lunar community grow and continue to be productive. Next slide, please. Last year, we had a good amount of participation in the Artemis III science definition team. We produced a good amount of input for the team through direct polling of the executive committee of League. The executive committee of League also helped to prioritize polling of targeted polling of community members and different community groups within the lunar science community. And I also served as a consultant to the Artemis III science definition team as a representative of the community. We also held a joint town hall with Solar System Exploration Research Virtual Institute, or SERVI, for broader community input. So again, we're helping to bring the community together and have conversations where they need to be held. So we're very proud of that document that came out, and it is available for download now if you look at the link at the bottom. Next slide, please. We also held another town hall, virtually, of course, in January regarding the New Frontiers 5 call. Specifically, one of the concerns was about some wording of the Lunar South Pole Aitken Basin sample return, where the original or the most recent draft had pending Artemis landing site selections and science objectives, and the League Executive Committee wrote a document for the program scientists for New Frontiers 5, suggesting that the SPA sample return should remain, since it is still one of the highest, if not the highest, science priority in the past few decades. And we won't really know where that landing site is going to be for Artemis for a little while. Another thing that we are working on currently is prioritization of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that's what EDI stands for, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So what can or should the League Executive Committee do? We want to focus on what we can do and advocate for specific efforts in the lunar community, as well as provide equity, diversity, and inclusion services for the community. So some of the first things that we decided to prioritize was to develop a code of conduct for our conferences, for our town halls, as well as to promote inclusive conferences. So for example, what we did with the New Frontiers Town Hall was we ensured that we had closed captioning to help with that accessibility. We are currently planning the annual meeting for 2021. It will be virtual. It will be held August 31st through September 2nd. And the theme of it is lunar science and exploration in the next 5 years. In particular, we want to engage and showcase the early career community. And I am sure that there will be a good amount of discussion about resources and how we can use lunar resources to continue to explore the lunar surface and then beyond the moon. Next slide, please. I mentioned the decadal survey from the National Academies. So we had 4 official League white papers. These were looking at the lunar missions for the next decade, recognizing that the moon is a very unique environment and what are the different things that we can do on the moon that we cannot do in other places. Recognizing that lunar science is going to tell us about the whole solar system. Again, the bombardment history is an excellent example of that. And then also that human exploration in particular is important. There's a lot that humans can do that we cannot achieve quite as well with robotics. For example, the dexterity of an astronaut's hand. Next slide, please. I mentioned before that we have findings from each of the League annual meetings. So our 2020 meeting was held in September with the theme of the value of a sustained human presence at the Artemis Base Camp. We had 22 findings, and I do not have time to go through all of them, but they branched across 4 overarching themes. One was the Artemis program, including some requests for more information from NASA. The second was sustainable exploration of the moon and beyond. What do we need for that? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and a commercial advisory board findings. I'm only going to cover some small snippets of a few of these and how they relate to this week here with with space resources, excuse me. But you can find all of the findings at the League website, which I've included there below. Two of our requests for more information that related to resources. One was requesting more information regarding the plans for Artemis Base Camp that included, but wasn't limited to, the use of in situ resource utilization to allow that sustained human presence. Again, we firmly believe that we need those resources for a sustainable and continued human presence on the lunar surface. And we requested a little bit more information about what NASA's vision would be for that. We also requested more information on the timing and delivery of planned lunar surface assets, as well as in situ resource utilization capability, particularly looking at power systems and large-scale ISRU to support the Artemis missions. Next slide, please. Also with Artemis, one of our findings was that we strongly support the goal of establishing a thriving and successful Artemis base camp through the Artemis program as quickly as possible. And again, for this to be successful and sustainable, we need to have those resources. Moving into the second group, which is sustainable exploration of the moon and beyond. I've only included snippets of two findings here. Finding 2.2 said that studies should be conducted on the lunar surface to advance our capabilities and technologies that will enable sustainable human missions, particularly, again, looking at resources, characterizing those resources, the distribution of the resources as well. Finding 2.7 was that we were very pleased with the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, or VIPER mission, as the key first step to characterizing lunar resources, and we strongly urge a resource prospecting campaign as the next step. Next slide, please. One of the unique entities of the Lunar Exploration Analysis Group is the Commercial Advisory Board. This was first formed in 2015 by our past chair, Clive Neal, and it was to act as a forum between NASA, commercial groups, and the broader lunar community, and it continues to do so. We have had a little bit of restructuring with that group. We have a new chair, for example, Dr. Elizabeth Frank, who is at first mode. We have quite a few members in this group representing 38 companies, which is pretty significant. And again, this group is to act as a resource to NASA. They can provide analysis, they can give us information about the impact of the commercial sector, and again, providing a forum for discussion between the commercial sector, the lunar science, broader lunar science community, and NASA. Next slide, please. At the beginning, I mentioned the lunar exploration roadmap and where do resources fit in there. So a little background about the roadmap. This document was originally produced, it's a living document, but this one was originally produced to map science goals to objectives, observations, and measurements, to identify technological developments that would be needed, and coordination with commercial and international partners that would be needed, as well as what feed-forward activities would we need to explore beyond the moon, such as Mars. And these all are trying to answer the question, how do we get to the moon to stay? And how do we do it sustainably? So there are three components for that. There are science components. So what are some of the important questions that we need to answer about the moon? What are feed-forward preparations that we need to do to be able to go to other destinations? And then in terms of sustainability, what do we need to be able to continue to go to the moon and to be able to explore the moon and then move beyond the moon? Next slide, please. So where exactly do resources and in situ resource utilization fit into the roadmap? There are a few things here. The first is time phasing and science priorities. The roadmap goes through and identifies what things need to be done early, what things need to be done kind of middle, and what things can be done later. So for example, if you're trying to characterize volatiles, you may want to be doing that early before you start landing a lot of landers on the lunar surface, and potential contamination issues may come out of that. So some things we need to do fairly early. We also have science priorities. Now, all of the science that we want to do on the moon is, of course, important, but some of them are going to be driving missions. And some of them are going to be, hey, this is great if we can do this, but it's not necessarily going to drive the mission. It's going to be kind of piggybacking. Okay, so that's one component here. The rest of the resources in the exploration roadmap can be separated into three different groups. One is important steps for resource and exploration symbiosis. So these things go together. The first part of that is understanding what are the impacts of lunar exploration. We also need to look at deployment of robotic facilities for science and exploration operations, as well as establish sustainable transportation between Earth and the lunar surface. So for us to be able to have sustainable exploration, we need to have good transportation. The second in here is to characterize resources and distribution. This is absolutely critical. One example of this is understanding the impact process, which Kent mentioned a little bit ago in terms of looking at those differentiated melt sheets, whether or not there are resources in there that we can extract and utilize. We also have the regolith, which is all over the lunar surface. How can we use the regolith as a resource? It can record extralunar processes, so that's a great science objective, but also, there may be materials in there that we can use, as well as, looking at the regolith and how it's going to affect microbes or plants in long-term duration. Again, trying to have that sustainable human presence on the moon is a big challenge. The third component in here are knowledge gaps with the unique lunar environment. So how do things flow? How do different materials work and function on the lunar surface in this reduced gravity environment? Very different from what we have here on Earth, as well as investigating the production of oxygen, again, from that lunar regolith in that lunar gravity environment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I see you have the summary slide, so I'll just look at the other screen. First and foremost is that League strongly supports characterization and utilization of lunar resources. These are critical for sustainable human exploration. We see this in robotic and human missions, particularly with the Viper mission that's going to be going soon is very exciting. Also, the Artemis III science definition team referred to resources as an important component. We see it in the lunar exploration roadmap, and we see it in some of these workshops from specific action teams, for example, as well. And again, we need to have those lunar resources to make voyages to the moon, to make voyages beyond the moon, and make sure that it is sustainable. So I wanted to end with just, again, we support the characterization and distribution of resources on the lunar surface, and that the next step is going to be to have a resource prospecting campaign. And that's all I have. Thank you. I don't know where my slides went.
Thank you so much, Amy. Well, it's lovely to end by looking at you, and you have a wonderful mug there as well with, I think, the moon on it. Wonderful. and a lovely background to your office as well there. Very fitting, of course. We are completely over time, so despite the fact that many people would like to ask you questions, we're going to cut our break to 10 minutes. But just to round that up, if everybody could be ready to start again at 10 minutes past 4, that's actually 12 minutes. We're going to take a 12-minute break. There is time to network in the lobby. And also just to say that the networking online will remain open all night long. So even though that opportunity is condensed for you right now, it will be open for you all night long. So 10 minutes, well, just over 10 minutes. We'll start with James Carpenter and session 2 this afternoon, 10 past 4. Thank you.